Okay, so picture this, right? You're stuck deep in the Philippine jungle.
Oh, wow.
The year is 1952, and you're convinced
Okay.
World War II is still going on.
Oh, wow.
That's the reality that Hiroo Onoda,
Okay.
a Japanese soldier, lived for almost 30 years.
Wow.
And that's what we're going to be diving into today.
Okay.
We're looking at the story of Hiroo Onoda,
Yeah.
and we have this this really great account called hiroonoda.txt,
Okay.
and it's wild. It's
Yeah.
a story of survival duty and
Yeah.
how our minds can basically just latch on to belief,
Yeah.
even when the world is telling us otherwise.
So almost like a delusion, right?
Yeah.
Like a mass delusion.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because it's not just about surviving the jungle, which is crazy in itself.
Of course.
But
Yeah.
it's about surviving a reality that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, that no longer exists. Yeah.
And right from the start, his story is so gripping.
Okay.
You know, he gets these orders in 1944, as World War II is nearing its end,
Right.
to basically go into this jungle on Lubang Island and wage guerrilla warfare.
Oh, wow.
And his mission was very clear.
Hey.
He was to hold out until the Japanese army returned.
Mm-hmm.
But the part that really gets you is that the emphasis was on never surrender.
Never surrender.
And that's so crucial because it speaks to the mindset that was drilled into Japanese soldiers at the time.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
this wasn't just like a military order.
Right.
This was tied to their cultural code of honor.
Yeah, absolutely.
And surrender was seen as bringing shame to not only the soldier, but also to their family and even their ancestors.
I see.
So you can imagine the pressure
Right.
that was on him.
Tremendous pressure.
So he's in this unbelievably hostile environment.
Yeah.
He's cut off from the outside world. Right. And his only reality is the one that's being reinforced by his training and by his mission.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it makes you wonder how do you begin to even to process information when everything is filtered through that lens.
Yeah, it's like he's almost trapped in a time capsule.
Right.
with his worldview frozen in 1944.
Right. And so he wasn't alone in this, was he?
No, he wasn't.
He had other soldiers with him.
He did. He had a small group under his command.
Okay.
There was Akatsu, Kuzuka, and Shimada.
Okay.
And they were all in it together.
Yeah.
They were facing this unknown.
Right.
In the depths of the Lubang jungle. You can imagine the bond that they must formed.
Right.
You know, relying on each other for survival.
Right.
Not just physically, but mentally as well.
Yeah. Okay, but now I'm thinking, like, how did they actually survive?
Right.
I mean, we're talking years in a jungle environment.
It's incredible, right? The early years were really all about adaptation.
Okay.
Lubang Island wasn't exactly a tropical paradise.
Right.
They had to learn to navigate that terrain, to find food, to find water, to build shelter, and to do all of that while constantly believing they were surrounded by the enemy.
And did they have encounters with the local population at all?
They did, and those interactions were often pretty tense. You know, many Filipinos were pro-American,
right?
Which just further kind of reinforced the soldiers' sense of isolation and paranoia.
So it's almost like their world shrunk down to this tiny little pocket of resistance.
Tiny pocket of resistance, yeah.
And it seems like early on there were some cracks in that shared reality.
Right.
One of the soldiers, Akatsu, ended up deserting the group in 1949.
He did, yeah.
Wow, can you imagine the psychological impact on him?
It must have been tremendous, right?
To question everything, to doubt your comrades.
Comrades, yeah.
To be afraid of being labeled a traitor.
A traitor, yeah.
So that desertion must have been a huge blow to Onoda and the others.
Definitely.
Did it cause them to question their own convictions?
You know, it seems like it might have solidified their resolve even further.
Really?
They viewed his desertion as weakness.
Wow.
As proof of the enemy's attempts to undermine them. So it's a powerful example of how isolation and fear can really warp a person's perception.
So the war ends, but Onoda and his men are still there, totally unaware.
In the jungle,
I read that that the Americans even dropped leaflets informing them of the surrender.
That's right.
And this is where it gets really wild.
It does.
They dismiss these leaflets
as enemy propaganda.
It's propaganda. Yeah.
So they're seeing these leaflets. They're seeing, it's in their language. It's confirming that the war's over.
Right, yeah.
And they just reject it.
They reject it.
Right.
They do. And you have to remember, they were trained in psychological warfare.
Right.
They were looking for any inconsistencies, hidden messages, anything that would kind of betray the leaflets as a trick.
Oh, wow. So they were so entrenched in their mission that they literally could not see the truth staring them in the face.
It was in front of them.
And it wasn't just leaflets, right?
No, it wasn't.
I mean, they received letters later.
Right.
They even got recorded messages.
They did, from their family.
And family to come home.
Oh my God.
And they viewed all of it as fabrications, as elaborate schemes designed to break their will.
It's heartbreaking.
It is.
To be so close.
Yeah.
To a connection, to home.
To connection, yeah.
And to reject it because your belief is so strong.
Because of that belief, yeah.
Wow.
Their reality was just so distorted.
Yeah.
So heavily filtered through that lens of war.
Yeah.
That they turned even these heartfelt pleas into evidence of the enemy's cunning.
It's crazy how the mind can do that.
It is. It's incredible and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're living this distorted reality, but they're not just, passively hiding in the jungle, are they?
No, not at all.
They're still actively engaging in what they believe is warfare.
Exactly. And this is where the tragic consequences of their delusion really become clear. Yeah. They were involved in firefights.
Oh, wow.
With Filipino police and civilians.
Oh, wow.
They believed they were enemy forces.
It's hard to reconcile the image of these men who are, so dedicated to their duty. With the reality that they were causing harm to innocent people.
It really highlights the complex moral questions at the heart of Onoda's story.
Right.
Were his actions justified?
Right.
Because he genuinely believed he was fighting for his country.
Right.
Or does the fact that he was operating under a false reality negate any sense of moral justification?
It's a question with no easy answers.
It really is.
And the tragedy deepened. Right?
It did, yeah.
I mean, some of his men, they died.
They did, tragically.
During these encounters.
Both Shimada and Kazuka lost their lives in these skirmishes.
Leaving Onoda completely alone.
Completely alone.
Can you imagine the weight, that isolation?
It's unimaginable.
The guilt that he must have carried.
Knowing that his comrades had died for a war that was already over.
A war that was over, yeah.
It's almost unfathomable.
It is.
And yet he persists for over a decade.
Yeah.
He's alone in the jungle.
He's alone in the jungle.
Still clinging to this mission.
Yeah.
What kept them going?
Well, it was more than just faith at this point.
Oh.
I mean, Onoda was a highly resourceful individual. He survived off the land.
Right.
He became a master of jungle survival.
Right.
And incredibly, he even managed to capture a working radio in 1965.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you'd think having access to outside information would have shattered this illusion.
You would think, but actually, it kind of had the opposite effect.
Okay.
He very carefully selected broadcasts that seemed to confirm his suspicions.
Wow.
About this ongoing war.
Wow, that's amazing.
No, it is how the human mind can do that.
It is.
So eventually, though, Onoda's isolation does come to an end.
Right, it does.
Tell me about his encounter with Norio Suzuki.
All right, so this is where the story takes another unexpected turn.
Okay.
In 1974, a young Japanese adventurer named Norio Suzuki set out to find Onoda.
Wow.
Almost like a personal quest for him.
I'm picturing this scene, right?
Yeah.
Onoda,
yeah.
this seasoned soldier, hardened by years of jungle warfare.
Years of it, yeah.
Coming face to face with this I don't know, free-spirited hippie.
It's not far off.
Really?
I mean, Suzuki was definitely an unconventional figure.
Okay.
He was a bit of a wanderer, drawn to the unusual and the unknown.
Okay.
And for him, finding Onoda was like discovering a living legend.
Did Onoda believe him?
Well,
I mean, after all those years of dismissing everything as enemy propaganda.
Right. How could he trust anyone?
Right.
It was a gradual process.
Okay.
Suzuki spent days gaining Onoda's trust.
Okay.
Talking to him about Japan, sharing stories, showing him evidence of the world outside the jungle.
But even then, Onoda wouldn't just accept the truth.
No. He was still very much bound by his orders.
Okay.
He insisted that he would only surrender if he received a direct command.
Oh, wow.
From his former superior officer.
Wow. So they had to track down his commanding officer?
They did. They managed to locate Major Taniguchi, who was, by that time, living a quiet life as a bookstore owner.
Wow.
They brought him to Lubang Island. And in a scene straight out of a movie, the Major officially relieved Onoda of his duties.
Oh, my God.
Informing him that the war had ended.
Wow.
Nearly 30 years earlier.
Wow, I can only imagine the emotions.
It's hard to fathom, right? The relief, the confusion, maybe even anger.
Right.
It's a moment that really captures, I think, the profound psychological impact of this experience.
Yeah.
He emerged from the jungle, not a conquering hero,
right?
But a man lost in time.
Yeah.
A relic of a bygone era.
Wow.
And he formally surrendered.
He did.
To the Philippine government. He laid down his rifle.
Okay.
A weapon he had meticulously maintained for decades.
Wow.
A symbol of his unwavering commitment.
Wow.
It was a powerful image.
Yeah.
A soldier surrendering to a war that no longer existed.
Yeah.
A surrender to time itself.
Wow. Yeah, it's a powerful image to hold on to something so strongly for so long. And then to have it just dissolve before your eyes. Yeah. So what happened next? How did the world react to Onoda's reemergence?
It was a mixed bag, really.
Okay.
Some people hailed him as a hero.
Right.
A symbol of unwavering loyalty and dedication.
Right.
They really admired his tenacity, his ability to survive against all odds.
I can almost see the headlines. Lost soldier returns after 30 years.
Right. Never gave up.
Yeah.
But others were more critical.
Okay.
They pointed to the lives lost in those unnecessary skirmishes.
Right.
The fear that he instilled in the local communities.
Yeah.
And they questioned whether his dedication had crossed the line into fanaticism.
Yeah. I think that's the thing about Onoda's story.
Right.
It forces you to grapple with these tough questions.
These difficult questions.
Where do you draw the line between duty and delusion?
Right.
When does blind obedience become harmful?
It's a debate that continues to this day.
Right.
And it goes beyond just Onoda himself.
Right.
It really raises these larger questions.
Yeah.
About the psychological impact of war.
Yeah.
The power of propaganda.
Yeah.
And the ways in which our minds can shape our own realities.
It makes you wonder what happened to Onoda internally.
Right.
How do you even begin to process such a massive shift in your understanding of the world?
It seems that he struggled to adapt to life back in Japan.
Right.
He found the rapid pace of modernization jarring the consumer culture, alienating.
Well, yeah, after living in a time capsule for 30 years.
Right. Imagine trying to catch up with 30 years of technological and social change.
Yeah, overnight.
Practically overnight.
It's like stepping onto another planet.
It is.
So what did he do? How did he cope with this massive reentry?
He eventually emigrated to Brazil.
Okay.
And he started a cattle ranch.
Interesting.
Maybe he was seeking a simpler life.
Yeah.
A connection to nature that reminded him of his time in the jungle.
Right.
But without that burden of war.
Yeah. There's a certain poetry in that, isn't there?
There is.
The soldier returning to the land, seeking peace.
Peace, yeah.
In the rhythms of nature.
The rhythms of nature.
And even though he built this new life for himself, he never forgot his past.
He did.
In 1996, he returned to Lubang Island.
He did.
He visited the graves of his fallen comrades.
Yeah.
He donated money to a local school.
He did.
And he even met with some of the people that he had once considered enemies.
That must have been powerful.
That's incredible.
For both him and the people he encountered.
Yeah, what a gesture.
Of reconciliation.
Good gesture of reconciliation.
I mean, trying to bridge this gap.
Trying to bridge that gap, yeah.
Between his distorted past and the present.
Right.
It shows a real capacity for growth, for acknowledging the complexity of his actions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Onoda's story is one that really stays with you.
It does.
It's a reminder that reality is often subjective.
It is.
You know, it's shaped by our beliefs, and our experiences.
Absolutely.
And it highlights the power.
The power, yeah.
The human mind to adapt, to cope. And to find meaning.
And to find meaning, yeah.
Even in the most extraordinary of circumstances.
It's a story that continues to fascinate and provoke discussion even today.
It does.
And as we've seen, it's not just about one man's incredible journey.
Right. It's about the nature of war,
right?
The resilience of the human spirit,
right?
And that enduring search for truth,
right?
Even when it's hidden in the depths of the jungle, or the recesses of our own minds.
Well, thank you so much for taking this deep dive with me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Really fascinating.
Yeah, it's been a wild one.
It had.
And I hope everyone listening got something out of this.
I hope so too.
As well.
Yeah.